Welcome back to the Raising Our Vibration podcast, where we explore higher consciousness through spiritual practice. And today, Stephen and I are going to discuss manifesting misconceptions and how it actually works. So we're not talking about how to manifest your misconceptions. So what we're talking about is misconceptions about manifesting. And I traced this back, although you could take it back farther, but in our current cultural setting, to the movie The Secret. And when The Secret came out, it became this big phenomenon, and manifesting was all the rage, and everybody. And so people had the idea from that is, if I get a clear idea of what I want, and then I really feel it as if it's here, and I set a strong intention for that, then poof, it's like magic. It's like a magic act. All of a sudden, there's my Ferrari in the driveway, or all of a sudden, there's my executive job, or all of a sudden, there's the love of my life just right in front of me. And then people practiced that, and they got frustrated. And it didn't, for most people, that didn't work. So what didn't work about it? So first of all, what didn't work was, it wasn't like a magic show that this material reality just changed, and because they thought differently and felt differently and had a different intention. Okay. So I think the main misconception in this comes from our materialist mindset. And this isn't a podcast on what's wrong with materialism and why it's an incoherent and inaccurate and just failed philosophy for looking at life. You can refer to Bernardo Kastrup and Rupert Spira and Donald Hoffman and Swami Sarvapriyananda. They all give great presentations on that, in-depth deconstructing materialism. But what we're going to focus on here is the mindset, the way of perceiving that materialism gives to us and how that relates to manifesting. So the materialist mindset is basically the way I see things. I look out and I perceive through my five senses. That's the way things are. Okay, so and we are so embedded in this materialist mindset that we just take that for granted. We think, oh, well, if I see something, the way I experience it is the way that it is. But that's just not accurate to how perception works. If we really look at perception, we have to admit that, starting with the five senses, we have senses that operate within a specific bandwidth. Like we can see specific frequencies of light, and we can hear specific sound frequencies and not others. And our sense of smells in a certain range versus other beings, like a dog who can smell things from, miles away. So what does that tell us? That tells us that our perceptual system is highly filtered. The reality that we're experiencing is highly filtered, highly limited, and we don't realize that. We don't realize that what we experience is the result of what we're focusing on, what we're able to take in, and how we relate to that. And that's really the insight that can unlock manifesting for us. So I know, Stephen, you have some analogies or some facts from science about our perception that can help us understand that even deeper. So I'll pass to you for that.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin, and love and blessings to everybody who's listening. we certainly offer all the benefits of what we're going to share here to you, because this is really a very mutual exploration and a dialogue that Kevin and I are having with you. So it's probably bringing up lots of questions right now. And one of the first stages I go to is simply to ask people to look at their perception itself. Now, just as Kevin said, most of us think that what we see is actually what reality is. And that tends to focus on one form of consciousness. And a number of guidances that I do and that Kevin does actually focus on us exploring all the range of forms of consciousness. For example, if you're a seeing person, you'll tend to view reality and you'll think, that house over there is real and I can touch it. So that's what the reality is. And you might completely ignore, for example, the hearing or the sound of the house or the smell of the house or the taste of what it's like to be in the environment of the house, or what the house actually feels like. Or indeed, if you start to rest back in your perception, in your awareness of what your mind and your thoughts and your feelings bring up around the house, you might find that, in fact, you see the house quite differently than somebody else. Somebody might look at that house and have a feeling or a thought of, oh, that brings up a memory of my childhood. I really don't like that house. Or they'll look at it and think, oh, I could never afford that house, or, well, that house is far too cheap for me. So you four people could look at the same house and actually be going through a completely different experience of what appears to be very solid to all people concerned. And then you can even look at the one that is creating all the stories of this, the self. So there's another form of you perceiving reality, because you've actually woven a whole series of stories right throughout your life about what houses are and what they mean to you. Some people will just relate to houses as just a whole lot of bricks and wood that you put together. And for other people, they're living organisms. So they actually try to build out, much as in our natural kingdom, houses or nests can be extremely organic and extremely vital to our well-being. For other people, they don't give much thought to it. It just happens to be an apartment or a place that they're in for a temporary period of time, without considering the sacredness and the energy of that organism that we call a house. I'm using a house as a sort of a very simple example. So you might be aware now, just as you're listening to me, that, oh, actually, my whole life I tend to focus on just one type of perception. So there's not only the limited range that Kevin was talking about, and the fact that we only see light, the certain frequencies of light, or hear certain ranges of sound, but equally we tend to only focus on a certain sense. There's a certain way that we actually conduct our lives, and we're completely unaware that we're mostly connected with that sense. And once you start to consider senses itself, then you start to realize, oh, and we also have more than 5 senses. There are other senses engaged here that we simply may have never been pointed to at any time. So there was a philosopher and a scientist in 1978, Guy Murchie, who came up with 48 senses, including the one I often love to consider, and that is think of the electromagnetic sense of like Magneto and the X-Men, and people think, well, isn't that just a movie? Well, in fact, a professor out of the California Institute of Technology in 2019, when he was working with colleagues in Japan and the USA, pointed out that this is actually a real potential for the human being, and that research that they conducted suggested that our human system can actually tell north from south, much like the experiences of animals, that we have an alternative mechanism that involves cells in our bodies that have iron-based crystals that actually rotate a bit like the needle of a compass. And so they open and close pores in our cells and thereby affect the signals that are sent to the brain and give us a sense of direction. So you might have heard, my wife and I often joke, Kevin, about our sense of direction, because she'll go with friends and they'll have a map and they don't know which way they're supposed to be going. And they'll ask me, and I intuitively know that it's actually over there, because I know already, north at the moment is behind me. And I do a lot of direction finding, and I used to love doing that as a kid. And that's not, it's not a gender thing. It's just simply that some of us might be more oriented to those, direction finding systems, or what we could call the magnetoreception in our bodies. So this points really to the power of interoception, or inner sensing, when we combine it with practices like mindfulness and meditation. They bring an incredible power to us as human beings in our infinite potential. So I love that feeling that, okay, first of all, consider your perception as you're listening to me. Are you more seeing focused, or more hearing, or more feeling? What's your predominant sense? And then consider the senses, that you focused on, that might only be connected with those 5. Consider unfolding beyond that into these explore it, research it, find out what other senses exist. And you might have a particular ability or a potential with some like that, like the direction finding, like being a human compass, that might actually be very helpful, and that you've never explored because your awareness has never been brought to it. So it really tells us how we think in a very narrow way about our perception, and how there are so many opportunities to avail ourselves of. So that really speaks to how misconception can easily arise, because, Kevin, we're so certain that what we see is all there is, when in fact we are predominantly, for example, we might be a predominantly visual person, and we might not have ever thought about the feeling of our environment. So we just look at it and we say, oh, well, I'm in a room and there's objects. But even that is a classic case of how we can misperceive or misconceive things. It's right now, if you're in a room and you're listening to us, consider 5 things in your room that you haven't paid attention to today, right? I guarantee you've gone into your room and you've probably you've conducted yourself in your room in your usual way, because your perception's kind of, without you realizing, is locked into a particular thing. So consider now the rear upper left-hand corner of your room, and consider that you probably never looked. I'm looking at it right now. Oh, look at that. It's got a particular angle, and it's got there's an air conditioning system there. And there's something I hadn't noticed about just exactly how close that's placed to that point. So you might start to actually, even though you think, oh yeah, I know everything because I see it and it's real, but you'll be aware that your vision's only picking up really certain aspects of what's apparent. And that's something that I'm really, really very aware of, is especially with vision, because it's so dominant for many of us. And even with sound, you'll pick up sound, and you get, instead of being aware of all the sounds in your environment, if you're listening to me now, consider listening underneath those sounds. What's underneath? So there might be a hum in your environment that you've never really been aware of. I remember a good friend of ours, Kevin Kiefer, was saying that when Carmel by the Sea had a power shutdown, he was suddenly aware of all the silence, that there had been a electrical hum that was constant throughout, the whole day. And you're probably aware of this, and you're not, well, aware and not aware. It's there, but until it's actually not there, you're not aware that it's there. And that shows how our perception can quite easily fall or actually play with our minds, because our minds start to adjust in a way to what we think is reality. And suddenly when somebody turns the power off, when Carmel went through those challenges with storms, and the power was out and the Wi-Fi was out and so on and so forth, then suddenly conducting your life with senses in a different way. And he said he was just aware of how absolutely precious the silence was. Because what you consider is your silent hearing right now might actually have lots of very subtle hums or vibrations or electrical energies in your system or in your environment that you're not aware of.
And that brings up for me how much of our perception is just habit, right? We have a habit of just looking at things in a certain way and thinking that's the way things are. And we tend to be, for most of us in this culture where we're dealing with a lot of screens and a lot of information input that's conceptual and visual, we tend to get tracked into a certain way of perceiving and a certain set of beliefs around that. And then if we're thinking, oh, well, I want a different possibility in my life, I want something new, but we continue to operate with the same habits of perception, then we're not able to, even if it was right here in front of us, we wouldn't perceive it, right? Because we're so tracked into looking at things in a certain way that we're unable to see any other possibilities. And it seems like we're becoming more and more like that, especially in the world of social media and politics and all this, is that people are getting narrower and narrower and more habituated to their small little track, their small little lens. And so it seems like that possibility of something new becomes less and less the more that we groove those habits of perception. And so how do we do something different, right? How do we first, as you were pointing out, is to recognize how we're looking at things, how we're perceiving things, to become aware of our own biases, to become aware of, oh, that I'm just looking, I'm focusing on this and I'm relating to it in this way. And so I like it or I dislike it. And I think, oh, well, it's a good thing or a bad thing just because of how I'm looking at it, what I'm focusing on, and how I'm relating to that. So first we have to become aware of how we are perceiving things, become aware of our thoughts that come up as we look at something, become aware that we're just tunneled in and looking only at certain things and not taking in a wider spectrum. So awareness is first, right? And that's something we really learn in meditation practice, is that we start to notice our thoughts and our feelings, our habitual tendencies. They just tend to rise up when we start to recognize them. And we may not like that at first, but part of the art of meditating is just allowing that to be, recognizing, being aware, welcoming what is, so we can actually see where we're coming from. And then we'll start to understand that, well, because of where I'm coming from, that's what I'm experiencing in the world. There's a direct correlation between what I'm thinking and feeling and the actions I'm taking and what I experience in my life. And so that awareness, right? Step one.
Kevin, absolutely. The awareness is something that I was witness to in a recent group that I was guiding, where there were over 100 people, and we were exploring the vastness of being and in some of its many forms. And when your awareness is taken, as you just mentioned, when it's taken from beyond our limited conceptual awareness into the more non-dual or infinite awareness, then something starts to open up. In fact, the possibilities of the secret do actually open up in a different way than you might have ever perceived. So the example I often give that I think everybody can relate to is, we know there are galaxies out there. So this is, as I'm saying this, of course, you're immediately going out beyond the news, beyond your social media, beyond the earth, and out to galaxies, right? So it's straight away, by saying something, I'm actually directing your attention to think of a wider field. And right now, we know there is light on the way from those galaxies to our eyes, but in fact, it hasn't had the opportunity to reach us yet because of the speed at which light travels. So we actually are only perceiving a fraction of what's present right now in the whole cosmos. I always find that an incredible fact, that we only perceive, just by the nature of light itself, a fraction of what is actually present in the whole cosmos itself. And
And a
then
tiny fraction, right? I
I
mean, just infinitesimal.
it's infinitesimally small when you consider now that fact alone is enough to spring your awareness into considering, what if that's true about everything that I perceive? What if I literally am only perceiving a fraction, just like Einstein said, a fraction of my potential, or a fraction of the cosmos, or a fraction of what I can connect to in terms of my opportunities in this life, which was kind of, in a way, what The Secret was saying is, and we're simply saying that there's some supporting evidence that points to the openness of awareness itself to being the real secret. Because that open, when you are in that open and infinite opportunity of consciousness, then you're more closely aligned with what the cosmos in its infiniteness is really allowing. You're allowing the cosmos itself to flow through you, because by nature, when you're open, you're truly open. It's an unlimited opportunity. It's boundless in that sense. And that's why Kevin and I keep guiding you all in that direction, is because, you know, same thing when you think about the stars and planets and galaxies that make up just for, you know, a few percent, 4% roughly, of the universe itself. The other 96% is stuff that astronomers can't see or even comprehend currently. Now consider that. Consider that the house that you're so sure is there is actually made up of 96% of stuff that you can't actually comprehend. And that is and imagine if you were to actually reach out to the potential of that, which is what true non-dual open potential of awareness is really speaking to. What if you were to reach out to the potential that you're not aware of or you don't see? That is exactly where Kevin and I have been speaking to all these years, is that potential is exactly the potential of the cosmos itself. It is it doesn't matter what you call it. There are lots of labels that you know, 96% of potential that we can't see but that actually exists. Is what, it doesn't matter what you name it, it's being open to it. That's the real key. That's what the guidance, Kevin, I know you've done a guidance this week that's going to be on the Raising Our Vibration app that actually points straight to that. So maybe I think people listening might want to know a little bit more about how do they do that? How do they access this absolutely infinite opportunity that's part of their natural being? How do they access that non-dual or open or infinite state of awareness?
Yeah, that's a good point. So first is as we talked about, just starting to recognize what your habitual patterns of perception are. So noticing the little box that you're, or the little lens that you're looking through, and start to get a feel for that. And then secondly, being willing to loosen that up a little bit, being willing to let go of that so that you can entertain other possibilities. Because you're not going to, as Einstein said, you can't solve a problem from the same state of consciousness that created it, right? So you can't have a new possibility arise if you continue to look through the same So first you have to recognize, and maybe if I just let that go a little bit, I could be open to something else. And so, for example, in this meditation, then how am I able to be open to something else? Well, first, it's a matter of kind of relaxing all of that, all those structures of perception. So quieting the mind and calming the emotions and relaxing the body that has all been oriented to a certain way of looking at things. So bringing the body into a state of calm, relaxed, inner happiness, really, just that natural peace that is available underneath all these different conflicting points of view that we might hold. So just starting to access a calm, just starting to quiet the mind and calm the heart and relax the body. And so that's where this meditation begins, is just, all right, let's just allow the system to ramp down a little bit and let go. And then through that, as the mind is quieter, the emotions are calmer, the body is relaxed, then to open to a felt sense of being itself, just simply being. So you might even do that just for a moment now. So what if you just let go of everything and just open to a felt sense of being? Just simply being, prior to thought or feeling, or prior even to a body, prior to a mind, just simply being. And just notice how that feels. Might feel like a relief. Just letting go of that busy mind, and just for a moment, letting go of even time and space. Just resting as being itself. Simply being aware. You might notice, are there any boundaries to that felt sense of being? Is there anything you need to do to be? Is this felt sense of being familiar? Is it something you've always known? So just enjoy a few moments of this openness of being itself. This pure possibility, this pure potential in this openness. You might notice now that your breathing is maybe calmed down, and there's just a sense of ease and peace and openness. And then from there, you can open up to a new possibility because you've let go of those habitual lenses, those habitual thoughts and feelings and tensions just for a moment. Then you're resting open. And that openness is the potential within which a new possibility can rise up. So then in this meditation, then there's guidance to allow a new possibility to arise, allow a new experience to come forth, and allow a new quality, a new feeling, Because really, when we're looking to manifest, we're looking to have a certain feeling, right? It's really not the Ferrari that we want, it's the feeling that comes with that. So we allow a new feeling to come forth and we experience that fully. And the amazing thing about this body, heart, mind of ours is that we can experience anything, literally anything at all, at any moment, right now. But it requires that letting go, that openness, and allowing that to come through. And when we rest in openness, we start to touch into the fact that we're in touch with every possibility, right? That this being, this awareness that we are, is open and infinite and boundless. What does that mean? It contains everything. This awareness that we are is that within which every possibility arises. And so the meditation then carries you through into experiencing a new possibility, noticing resistance that might come up that limits you from experiencing that possibility. And resistance naturally comes up from our old habitual ways of thinking. So working with that resistance and then going deeper into the possibility, and then considering, what action can I take right now that's lined up with that new possibility, that experience, right? So the meditation takes you through all those different steps. And that meditation is on our ROV meditation app, which you can get links to on the raisingourvibration.net website, or you can search on the Play Store or the Apple Store for that, or the App Store, for that. So, Stephen, anything else you want to say to kind of wrap up this discussion?
Oh, that was beautiful practice, Kevin. Short and really to the point. I think it, for me, it speaks to the way that when we do allow ourselves to rest and surrender and sink back in our own natural being, then we are open to more possibilities, to infinite possibilities. And when we contract, I quite often get clients coming to me saying, oh, I feel so tired, or I feel contracted. It's such a good sign if you know that. If you're aware of your contraction,
right,
then you can start to uncover what you can actually do about it. And simply if you allow yourself to rest back and allow the natural state of being, and often it can help if you're in a sacred environment, a place where it's calm, nature, if music does that for you, for example, to help you calm down a bit, if doing one of the meditations on the app just helps you to get into that calm and relaxed state, if being out in nature helps you to connect with that calmness and relaxation, that the key is, as Kevin was saying, is first of all to be aware, and then to find how naturally you can drop into a relaxed and calm state. So that, as Kevin was said, that saying that calm happiness state, and then doing some guidance with the kind of cues that Kevin was explaining that help you to actually rest back in your natural way of being, that is going to do so much to help open you to the boundlessness of your awareness. So when you do think about the amount of social media, what we're surrounded by, the sort of feedback we're getting most of the time from our news and from our politics and our economy and so on and so forth, it's no wonder that we're not living in a natural state of being or a natural way of being,
or openness at all.
Yeah.
Right, because everything we're watching is narrowing us down to this point of view versus that point of view. And so we've really, there's a momentum that goes against openness, right, at the current time. So So consider that too, as Stephen was saying, the media that you consume and what you engage with, because consider how it's narrowing your perception, how it's locking you into a point of view, and how that is giving you the experience that you're having of life. And so what if you start to recognize that and be open to loosening that and relaxing, letting go, opening to this wider, vast, boundless sense of being, and allowing new possibilities to come forth from there.
Beautifully said, Kevin.
Well, thank you, Stephen.
You take us right there, always.
Thank you for this discussion. It was a lot of fun. And thank you all for watching and listening and practicing along. And again, if you want information on meditation and awareness practices like this, you can visit raisingourvibration.net. And there you'll also find links to the ROV meditation app with a wealth of guided meditations that can help you relax and de-stress and also open up to vast new possibilities. So thank you for your practice. Thank you, Stephen, for this discussion. And we look forward to seeing you the next time. Bye for now.